Hello everyone and welcome to my channel if you are new. If you're not new, welcome back to my channel. My name is Marina and this is another monthly wrap up for the month of May. I just want to preface this by saying almost every book that I'm going to be talking about I briefly mentioned or discussed thoroughly in previous videos. I only read 6 books this month. I can feel the slump creeping in, guys. I'm not lying. I feel like it's gonna get rough the next month or two. You guys know summer is not my season. It's not my time to thrive. So don't expect many books in this video, or expect books that you've already heard me talk about at length. All right, with that being said, I am excited to dive into the few books I've read. This month was a pretty good reading month. As again, I'm sure you guys saw in previous videos, I tried to read my TBR, my physical TBR specifically. I read a few Kindle books. I read a really good audiobook. Can't ask for anything more than that, you know? So without further ado, let's get into it. So like I said, I didn't really read much that should surprise you guys. I'm gonna start off this video with the lowest rated book of the month and one of my worst reads of the year, if I'm being honest. Warrior, Princess, Assassin. Yeah. I think I told you guys about this book in my day in my life vlog or something. I can't remember. All of my videos were kind of blending together during the month of May, if I'm being honest. When I told you guys about this book, I was still in the middle of it, but I think you guys could probably tell by my thoughts and opinions while being in the middle of the book that it wouldn't be rated that high. Warrior, Princess, Assassin. We are following 3 characters: a warrior, a princess, and assassin. The princess, Jory, has to marry the warrior king, Kai, because of politics. He has an army that her kingdom needs and she has food that his kingdom needs. They join an alliance in marriage. She doesn't really know this man. He doesn't know her. As soon as they meet, Jory finds out that there is a hit on them because her best friend, Asher, is an assassin and he got a hit for her and for the warrior king. And so he goes to tell them and she's like, okay, we need to figure out who is plotting to kill us because I have no enemies. I'm literally just a princess locked in a tower. And she kind of is. She doesn't really know anyone outside the kingdom. It's mostly just her brother and her dad that carry the kingdom. Her only role is to get married to someone and hope for the best. But the warrior king might have many enemies, so they're just trying to figure out who is out to kill them while also like slowly falling in love with each other. This is a book about a throuple and that's why I read it. Okay, so I hope that you got that because that's literally the plot. And it's not that good of a plot, so it didn't really help my reading experience because the writing also wasn't that good and I found the characters to be a bit annoying. I would just like to start off by saying that the princess main character was the biggest letdown in this book. Thoroughly despise, have a deep hatred for when a character, specifically a female character, her only traits are being innocent and naive and helpless. And that's literally all that Jory is throughout this entire book, and I could not get into her. We're in 3 different POVs. Every time I got to her POV, I couldn't stand it. She was also just making really dumb decisions. These are all like mid-20s characters, okay? Like they're grown adults. I think Jory is literally like 24 or 25. I couldn't tell when I was reading in her point of view because she was making the most stupid mistakes. Has grown up in a castle her whole life, blocked away from like everyone. She doesn't really know how the real world works. So when she is forced to leave her environment that she's known all of her life, she doesn't really know how to navigate that. And I understand that. But I don't know, at some point, if you have your best friend who's an assassin and this warrior king who is really about that life outside these walls with you and they're telling you, hey, you probably shouldn't do that, it might get us killed, and she still does it anyway, and she does it for at least like 10 times throughout the book, my patience can only wear so thin. Like I can't. She was like the worst part of the book for me, and I really was not expecting that because, you know, usually when it comes to books like this, the trope for the princess is, oh yeah, she was sheltered her whole life, but she slowly starts to come out of her shell and gets like stronger, not even just physically but mentally mentally. She feels more confident in her abilities. And it's not that Jory doesn't have those qualities. She is a very kind person to a fault. Every single situation they got themselves in, it was at least like 95% of the time it was her fault. I could not. There was one scene that has been plaguing my mind for the past month where the Warrior King, think of like firebenders, okay? He has that ability. He can just like create fire. And so she asked him, she's like, can I see your power? And so he puts like a thing of fire in his hand, and he's like, you probably shouldn't touch it, it's real fire, it's hot. And she just literally ignores it, touches it anyway. I can't do this. Yeah, the princess, I could complain about the princess for the entirety of this review, but I'm not. I'm gonna talk about the other two characters. I actually like the assassin and I liked the warrior, but they're not that much better. I think the fact that most of this book takes place in over 24 hours makes it feel insta-lovey, so I couldn't really get into like the falling in love part of the book or like falling for each other period. Because mind you, they are on the run from hitmen. I feel like there's a lot more that needs to be discussed and brought to our attention that has nothing to do with like having the hots for each other. And I think that they kept on forgetting that throughout the book, and I just couldn't take it seriously. This was like low-key funny, but also it got really annoying really fast. Yeah, the story progression was weak, the world and the politics are boring, and I didn't think that the cliffhanger was all that interesting. I started off the month with a dud. I gave this book 1.5 stars, and the 0.5 is very generous, but I do think that like Asher, the assassin character, his story was really intriguing to me, and if only I could like push through and read just for his character, I think I would, but I don't think I want to do that to myself. I think that the sequel for this book just came out or is going to come out sometime this year. So if you enjoy this series, I'm happy for you. Let me know if you're enjoying the sequel, but no. I literally only read it because it was on Kindle Unlimited, and it's been on my radar for a while because I just wanted to read a book with a throuple in it, and now I have like deep regrets. Okay, now that I have that book out of the way, I'm going to briefly discuss these next few books because, again, I keep saying this, but if you saw my previous video that I posted, you would know what books I'm gonna be discussing. And because that video is like an hour long, I feel like there's not much to say in this wrap up. I'm not gonna lie to you. First off, we have Fishbone Cinderella by Elizabeth Lim. Oh my God. For those of you guys that don't know, this is my first Elizabeth Lim book. I have not read Six Crimson Cranes or any of her other books, and I'm really interested in doing it now that I've read this, I'm not gonna lie, because this was a 4.75 star for me. I loved everything about this. This is actually an arc for it. This is gonna be coming out in July, so make sure to put in your pre-orders. I'm pretty sure this is YA. I actually don't know if it is or if it isn't, but I know that she's written YA in the past, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is YA as well. But anyway, in this book, we're following two characters. We're following Helen and we're following her daughter Marigold in two different timelines. We're following Helen when she is a kid in 1940s to 1960s China when the Japanese invasion is happening. So a lot to unpack there. And then we are also following Marigold in the 1980s when she is traveling with her mom, Helen, to go back to Hong Kong from America where they live. And the majority of the story, we are following Helen. Most of her childhood is living through the invasion of Japan in the 1940s and like the peak of it, okay? So like most of her childhood, all she's known is war and violence. But then one day her dad sends a message after he left her and her mom and her brothers to go marry someone new. He sends a letter being like, hey, you can come live with me in Hong Kong. It's safer over here. You can come stay with me. And so her and one of her brothers goes to live with her dad and her new stepmom and her new stepsister, and it gets really bad, as you know, of this tale of Cinderella. You can see like through all of the abuse and hardships that she is facing while living here, she also slowly finds a love. We're also briefly cutting back to Marigold, trying to figure out her mother's past, because the stuff that she does know about her mother is very scarce. Her mom isn't really open to sharing anything about herself. And so while we are reading in Helen's point of view to know what her childhood was like, we're also following Marigold as she discovers all of the secrets her mom is keeping, which includes why she turned invisible. Helen has the power to basically turn invisible at her will, and Marigold knows this, and she doesn't understand why her mom is so weird about it and why she doesn't say anything, because her mom also knows that she knows, and it's tangled into the family secrets of it all. So she's going with her mom to Hong Kong to figure out what she is keeping from her. And I hope that you got all of that, because that barely even scratches the surface. I don't want this to seem like it's just another Cinderella story, because in my honest opinion, at some point while reading this book, I forgot that this was a retelling of Cinderella, because Elizabeth Lim does such a good job of making this its own story. Like diving into the mother-daughter relationships of it all, not even just with Helen and Marigold, but also Helen and her mother, and Helen and her stepmother, and hell, her stepmother and her stepsister's mother-daughter relationship. This is just a book that unpacks the complexities of a mother-daughter relationship and what you would do to protect your daughter from having to live the life that you once lived. Every single woman in Helen's bloodline has faced so much cruelty and hardship from gifts that they get throughout their lives. And you could tell that Helen will do anything to make sure that her mom doesn't have to face that, her daughters don't have to face that, and she's willing to sacrifice a lot. And it's just a story about what would you do for the people you love so they don't have to face the same things that you have faced. And it's so beautiful. It's gorgeous. The prose in this book, the prose alone have made me an Elizabeth Lim stan. Like, I will be reading her other books just for her writing. It's literally gorgeous. I don't know what to tell you. I feel like each character was so complex. Like, yes, the evil stepmother was evil and there is no redemption for her, as there shouldn't be. But even with her character, I was so interested in knowing more about her, because we get glimpses into her past, and I would have loved to know like why the hell she's like this. Like, we get an answer as to why, but I would love to know more. Like, Elizabeth Lim does a good job of disclosing some hints of information, but not too much to the point where like she's like telling you everything. But at some point I was like, no, just tell me. Like I said, this isn't like a black and white Cinderella retelling, okay? There are different twists and turns within the story. I would especially say, like, when it comes to the romance element of Cinderella, that stuff, it's not really bar for bar, word for word what you would expect, but it is still like, I feel like a good retelling. And one thing about me that some of y'all might not know, I eat up a Cinderella retelling every time, so I'm biased. What can I say? This book is that good. 4.75 stars. It was so close to being a 5-star, but the only reason why is because I feel like the development when it comes to Marigold's story outside of her mom, it was kind of left a little open-ended. There was like one door that needed to be closed. Like, something that was revealed in like the second to last page happened, and then like there was no real closure for it. I would have loved to see the closure on page. The thing that I'm asking for from the book isn't the point of the story, but I would like to see it. And I can't go any deeper into it because I would be spoiling, but read it. Again, this is the arc. It doesn't come out for another month, so please, when it comes out, go buy it. I'm serious. This was one of the highlights of my month. Next book that I read, A Song to Drown Rivers by Anne Liang. I have been meaning to read this book for a long time, and I honestly forgot it was on my shelf. So I was actually really excited to pick this up, especially because I read one of Anne Liang's YA fiction romance books, This Time It's Real. I read that like 2 years ago, and I thought it was so cute. And I know that this is her adult fantasy romantasy debut, so I was like really excited to read this. I did not know this, but like it's a retelling, I think. It's inspired by the legend of Shisha, one of the famous four beauties of ancient China. I did not know this going in, that this was also a retelling, so I think that that's definitely like kind of flipped its head when it comes to like how I think of the story, because I don't know the original story of the four beauties of ancient China. Yeah, the story follows Shisha. She is the most beautiful girl in her village. Everyone in this village in ancient China knows this, to the point where her parents kind of like shelter her whole life just to keep men away from her, creepy men. When she does leave the house, she wears a veil over her head so no one stares at her too long. Like, it's that crazy. She hasn't been courted ever, not properly. So one day when she gets a knock on her door from the king's advisor, she's confused. She's like, what the heck is going on? Apparently the king needs the most beautiful woman ever, Shisha, to help them in taking down the enemy king that is invading their territory. Apparently they have a plan for her to be the enemy king's concubine, maybe his wife if she gets that far, and whatever intel she gets from him or the people in his castle, she needs to give over to them so that they can take him down. Shisha, again, very sheltered, has never left her house. She doesn't even know how to be a spy. She doesn't know how to be a concubine. She doesn't know really the first steps of being a wife. She is dirt poor. All she does is help take care of her family and her house, and she has like one best friend, but like she doesn't hang out with him because she's too busy like housekeeping. So she's like, are you sure you want me? Like, yes, I have the looks, but I don't think you guys know what you're getting yourself into. Like, I don't even know what I could bring to the table other than my looks. But the king's advisor, Fan Li, is open to help train her and her friend to be the concubine and lady in waiting that she needs to be in order to fulfill this quest. And so she accepts it. She goes with Fan Li to train, and then she is immediately taken to be the concubine for the enemy king. I have so many feelings when it comes to this book. Based off of the plot, it really reminded me of The Poet Empress by Shen Tao, which was one of my favorite reads of this year still. Like, it's June right now as of when I'm recording this, and that book still holds up as like top 10 material of the year for me personally. So from the plot alone, I was like, oh, this is very familiar. And I didn't go in reading a synopsis or blurb or anything. I went into this very blind. So as I was reading this, I was just getting very like strong Poet Empress vibes, and I think that's what kind of ruined it for me, if I'm being honest. Though very similar in terms of plot, it's not giving the same satisfaction as the Poet Empress gave me. I feel like this book is so short for the story that it is. I feel like, though, like it's not that much shorter than like Poet Empress, because Poet Empress was like around 400 pages and this is around 350. I feel like it didn't do as much with the amount of pages that the Poet Empress did, and I feel weird comparing it to it, but that's all I could do when I was reading it. I was just like, oh, this isn't hitting the same way as that book, and I feel bad for that, but it's true. I just feel like there was a pacing issue, especially when it came to like, again, the romance. This is like a common thing that I'm saying nowadays, especially in like romantasy books. If you want that romance to hit, you gotta have buildup. If I'm seeing like flirtations in the first 10 pages, then what are we even doing here? In my opinion, that's how I feel. Like, you guys know I am a slow burn girly. I love slow burn, and this one didn't really give me that. It also didn't really give me much in terms of like character exploration. I feel like I didn't really know much about Shisha. I didn't know much about her friend. I didn't really know much about the enemy king for as much time as she spent with him, because this book takes place over like the span of 2 or 3 years, and I feel like we got brief glimpses into who the king is and why he's so evil. It was very surface level. I feel like every character in this book was surface level, and that was the issue for me. And again, like I said, like the romance between Shisha and Fan Li, the king's advisor, it just didn't hit, because for a majority of the book, she's not with him. She's with the enemy king. A lot of the foundation for the romance was built in the first 100 pages, but it was barely even shown. Like, they had maybe 2 or 3 moments, and then she was shipped off to another man for a while, and then the ending happened and I was like, oh, that's not okay guys, while I'm editing this video, I'm also remembering another reason why I was not the biggest fan of this book, but also the main character. There was a part in the book where the main character and the MMC, Fan Li, were interacting, and he was obviously very intoxicated. Like, he drank way too much, and there was a scene of her trying to make a move on him when he was that drunk, and it made me uncomfortable. And I feel like I'm the only one who noticed this, because I was going through other reviews saying if other people called this out, that's sexual harassment. Like, the way that the scene played out, it was really, it made me uneasy in like the worst way, and it made me honestly dislike the main character, because he kept on saying, no, I can't do this, not right now, and she wouldn't take that as an answer and kept on pushing on him. I couldn't look at the main character the same. I couldn't look at their love story the same, and it just made me uncomfortable. So yeah, I think I put it in my review on Storygraph, but I forgot to mention it in the video, so I just wanted to clarify. If you are interested in this book, just be careful going into it, because I feel like that should be clarified. Like, that one scene really threw off the whole entire, not only vibe of the love story between the two characters, but also just the vibe of the book as a whole, because I just couldn't properly root for the main character anymore, you know? So yeah, let's get back to the video. I don't know, I was just like really unsatisfied by this, especially because like a lot of people have been telling me to read this over the past few years. Like, I remember one of my coworkers was like, you need to read this, I think that you would really like it. But I should have taken that with a grain of salt, because one of her favorite authors is Anne Liang, and as much as I love This Time It's Real, I wouldn't say Anne Liang is like up there for me in terms of one of my favorite authors, so maybe I should have considered that. But yeah, I just feel like this book wasn't it, so I gave it like not a low score or anything, but like a 3-star. It was okay, it was fine, but considering I put this in like my 5-star predictions video, I was expecting a lot more from it, and it just didn't give me that. All right, the next book that I read was actually one that I listened to on audio. This was actually an ARC that I got in May, but I think that the book should be out by now. I don't know, I think I've seen a lot of reviews for it come in as of late. Yeah, it came out actually today. So I read Sublimation by Isabel J. Kim. I've been hearing a lot of people talk about this book as one of their most anticipated releases, and I didn't know that the hype was there until like I saw a lot more people talking about it this past month. And so I thought, you know what, if I have the audio ARC, I guess I should figure out if the hype is worth it, you know, because I think that this is also Isabel Kim's debut novel. This book follows, says we're following 2 characters. I think we're following 4. Let me explain. Because I don't know how to explain this book without spoiling it, but I'm gonna try my best. We're following Rose and So-young. Rose, when they were younger, decided to make instances of themselves. Instances are basically body doubles, a twin. She basically made this twin when she was younger because her mom decided that they would be moving from South Korea to America, and so it's kind of normal in this society, in this world, this alternate universe that they live in, to make body doubles of yourself if you are choosing to migrate somewhere else for a long period of time. And so her and her mom ended up doing that. So there are 2 versions of Rose, or So-young. There's the one that lives in New York, and then there's the one that lives in South Korea. The one that lives in New York is Rose, and the one that lives in South Korea is So-young. I hope that this is not confusing. Okay, so we're following those 2 characters, but then we're also following very closely, might I add, which is why it's crazy that they're not in the synopsis. We're following her best friend, YJ and Yeonjin, who are also instances, and Rose ends up making an instance of herself when she's really young, and she doesn't really talk to her instance all that much until one day when they're like fully grown. So-young calls Rose up from South Korea being like, hey, granddad died, and I think that you might want to come to the funeral to see him off. I think that you might want to be here for this. And so Rose drops everything and flies back to South Korea for the first time since she left, and actually meets her instance. She doesn't know that So-young actually has a goal in mind of making them reintegrate. Reintegration is basically making them become one person again, because that was their granddad's dying wish, to make sure that like they become one again. Rose doesn't know this, but that's what So-young's mission is. And it's basically like, what would you do if you were an immigrant, but you had 2 versions of yourself? One version of you that's stuck back home in the place where you do consider your home, that you feel like you most fit in, versus the place where you are now that you've migrated, that you can build a better life for yourself. That's the door.
A few moments later.
Okay, I'm back. But basically, yes, the book is centered around these 2 characters, and then where YJ and Yeonjin fit in is later in the plot, but I feel like I need to bring them up because, I don't know, something about the premise of this book is very misleading, because yes, while it is about So-young wanting to go behind Rose's back and reintegrate them, there's like definitely a deeper message within the book about the complexities and nuances of immigrating and being an immigrant, and what that means for you and your identity, and feeling like you belong somewhere but also nowhere at the same time. I actually didn't know what to rate this book. For most of the month, I was sitting on a rating for this book because I didn't know how to feel about it. but I think I've landed on it being a 3.5. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I don't know how I felt about the writing, but I liked the messaging of it. Again, what the author was trying to do and say when it comes to immigrating and the themes of identity and family, deep family and friendships being affected by your choice of immigrating, what you would do to belong anywhere. It's a fun twist on an immigration story, because if I'm being honest, when I read the plot, I thought instantly of the show Severance on Apple TV. Like, you know how they have like their innies and outies in the workplace? I thought of that instantly with like an immigration twist, which I didn't know how it would work, but it worked for me because I ended up liking it. I think where I got lost with the book was honestly in like the second half. I think it had me in like, well, I don't even know. It had me off and on. This book is split into like, I think 4 parts or 5. And part 1 I liked, part 2 I wasn't the biggest fan of, part 3 I thought was fine. You know, like it was like off and on. And then when it got to the like last part of the book, I was like, this is giving very much like action movie ending. Like it was very dramatic for what it was. Granted, it's like a very serious story and ending to the book, but for what it was, I don't know, I just couldn't get into like the progression of the story and specifically the last act of it. I feel like my favorite part about this book was how making an instance has affected people throughout history, because there are like parts in the story where we take a break from like what the main characters are up to and we talk about like different instances in like mythology. So like Odysseus is brought up a lot of the time, like the story of the Odyssey and how Odysseus made himself an instance to stay with his family while he went off on his journey, and how when he came back home it affected him deeply to know that he wasn't there with his family while he was off perusing. A lot of like religious aspects of the book that I was not expecting, like Adam and Eve have instances, and there's a lot of talk about the devil is basically an instance of God and how they create what they want based off of what each other sees in themselves. Oh, I don't know how to describe this, because like I said, like I liked the story of Rose and So Young, but I feel like my favorite part about this book was learning about the world of instancing and how that has affected society throughout time. Like it has like real life articles about it, like from NPR. It has like statistics about like when instancing started and how it started and why it became such a phenomenon in America and all this stuff. That was my favorite part about the book. But I think that for a debut novel, very promising. I think I would read something else by Isabel Kim if she were to put out another book, because I think a premise like this is like very creative. It hit the mark when it comes to like the point getting across. I just feel like the pacing of the book needed a little bit of work. There's no real villain in this book. It's more so like an introspection on like how you see yourself based off of where you belong, where you come from. But I wish we could get more into like the negative effects of instancing. I feel like since this book came out on the day I'm recording this, I don't really have anyone to talk about it with. So if you are interested in reading it, I do suggest you do, because I would love to know other people's opinions on it. Like I'm so curious. But that was Sublimation by Isabel Kim, and I would recommend it. I would. Okay, the next book that I have is a 5-star read that I'm so excited to talk about, Blood Over Bright Haven by Emma Wong. Another book that I talked about in a recent video, so I really don't need to talk about it at length, but I just might because this book has been on my mind since I finished it. In this book, we are following 2 characters. We're following Siona and Domil, and Siona is living in Tehran, which is a very misogynistic society. She, as a woman, really wants to do like metal work. She wants to help create something in the society and better it, because she loves where she lives. She loves her people. She just hates that she, as a woman, isn't able to do what the men in power are able to do, until one day she does a test of some sort to get into the high mage program. High mages are people that are allowed to use power to unlock metals that they can use in their industry. Think like Full Metal Alchemist if you've seen that show, the world that they live in. Yeah. She gets into the program. She's the first female high mage to do so. So she's really loving life right now. She loves being able to make the world that she lives in a better place, the world of Tyron, not like the entirety of the world. Keep that in mind. Whereas Tamil, we meet him immediately at the beginning of this book, and he is basically an immigrant. He is not from Tyran. He is from the outside walls of Tyran, but he escapes there with his niece to get away from the hardships of life outside the walls. He loses his whole entire tribe, his family, from his sister to his brother-in-law. He loses everyone except his niece to escape and venture into Tyran for safety. But when he moves into Tyran, he realizes that him and people like him, tribes outside of the walls, get treated terribly. They basically are used to do slave labor, while everyone else in the society, like Siona, who has lived there her whole life, get to basically do whatever they want for the most part. One day when these two people cross paths, it's when Siona is assigned an assistant. Her assistant ends up being Tamil, who was originally a janitor. They give her Tamil as an assistant as a way to be like, here, take him. No one wants him. You're a woman. You don't need a real assistant to help you. Use like the janitor as help. But she uses Tamil to his advantage because she has a different perspective as him, obviously, when it comes to the world. And they use each other's perspectives as a way to kind of discover more about themselves, about the world that they live in. And through this, Siona also realizes that maybe everything she was taught about Tyron has been a lie. Maybe all of the prejudices she has against Tamil and his people are not in good faith. Maybe the God that she prays to isn't all that holy, and she's slowly starting to unlearn everything from when she was a kid up until now. And this is a story about what, not only unlearning the prejudices that you've grown up with, but what will you now do with this information to help make the world an actual better place, not just to benefit yourself and your people, but to benefit everyone. And it's a very powerful, moving story. I really loved this a lot. This is another standalone, and I feel like, again, what this book was able to do within like 400 pages is just amazing. And it gives me hope. It gives me a lot of hope when it comes to like the fantasy genre, because while you guys know I love my series, I love a good duology, I love a good trilogy, I love getting to know characters throughout a series of books. Sometimes a standalone is really all you need, truly, to make that story, those characters hit. And I've never read anything by Emma Wong. I do remember that this was low-key the book of the year though a few years ago. Everyone was recommending Blood Over Bright Haven. So I was gonna read it eventually. I just kept putting it off because I was a little intimidated. And if I'm being honest, I still am. I have Sword of Kaigen up in my room, and I have no desire to pick that up right now because it does intimidate me. But I am intrigued because of how much I love this book. Having to be in Siona's head for most of this book was so frustrating, but that's purposefully done. All I knew about this book going into it is that, one, it was compared to Full Metal Alchemist, but also that the main character is very annoying. Siona is not a likable character, but I like the fact that she's not a likable character. That's the whole point. You need to see how she is unfolding, how her views are not good, how her judgments that she makes are incorrect, and what she's willing to do to make not only herself a better person, but others around her, to open other people's eyes to what the truth is and how these people have been taught all of their lives isn't true, and that they should want to be better. She has this it's a very like hopeful outlook on the world and her people, that like, if I am able to unlearn this, everyone can. Like, if we just tell these people like what's really going on in this society, then like they'll obviously want to do better. But like, she has to realize that not everyone is like her, and some people are willing to put down others in order to make themselves stay at the top of the food chain. And it's like a slow awakening reading in her point of view. It's so good. It's so good. And of course I loved Tamil, and I loved his niece, Kara. I think she's my favorite character. Kara, she is such a badass. I think she was like 15 in this book. She's my favorite character in the entirety of the book. And the ending really messed me up. The ending made me cry, but I couldn't have thought of like a better ending than what this brought me. Like, it was devastating, it was heartbreaking, it was tragic, but it was everything I could have asked for and more. Like, I've also been thinking about this book a lot for the past like few weeks since I finished it. Crazy Emma Wong. I was not familiar with your game. I am now, and I will be reading Sword of Kaigen eventually. But if I'm being honest, I like I said, I'm still very scared of picking that book up. It's also just like very thick. I bought like a used copy of it from the bookstore, and I think it's like the indie edition of it. So it's like a paperback and it's like this thick. I need to be in the mood to read that. And right now I'm not. But I've heard that it's been compared to Atla, Avatar: The Last Airbender. So I'm sad. I will be reading that, just not anytime soon. All right, the last book that I'm going to be talking to you guys about is a Talia Hibbert book. It's been a while since I brought up Talia Hibbert on this channel. Actually, I don't even know if I brought her up on this channel. I think when I was reading the Brown Sisters trilogy books and I was obsessed with those books, I was talking about books on my previous channel still. So y'all don't know, Talia Hibbert is my girl. Like, I love the Brown Sisters trilogy again. And then I also really liked her YA debut, Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute. I thought that was such a cute, fun YA read, like such a good time. So when I found out that she was traditionally publishing a lot of her indie books this year, I was sad. I saw that A Girl Like Her was trad published. I saw it at the bookstore and I was like, you know what, let me actually get into this, because it has been so long since I read Talia Hibbert, and admittedly I have never read anything really outside of like those 4 books, and those are, I think, her most recent releases. She hasn't put out anything new since then. So I was like, you know what, maybe it is time to go through her backlist. So that's what I did. I read A Girl Like Her, the first book in the Ravenswood series. I think it's a trilogy, I'm pretty sure. This book follows Ruth, who is the town outcast in Ravenswood. No one likes Ruth. Literally, the only people that can put up with her are her mom and her sister. Everyone else, she's like shunned. Like, think of Boo Radley. Like, no one is willing to talk to her, and no one is willing to really say why. It's kind of like the mystery throughout the whole book. Like, what did Ruth do to deserve the vitriol of these people? Up until this new guy moves into town, Evan. Evan, he is a veteran just looking for work. And he is very nice. Everyone knows him as like the nice new guy in town, and he is Ruth's next door neighbor, and he immediately notices that like everyone is treating her weird, and he doesn't like that. So he starts to befriend her, giving her food, because he realizes that she doesn't really eat all that well. He's like, here, I can cook, I'll bring you some food, and we can chill and talk about DC Comics if you want. And she's like, okay. So like they slowly start to build a friendship, and as they get closer, obviously feelings start to develop, very much giving Grumpy Sunshine, Black Cat, Golden Retriever energy. And I'm a really big fan of when like the Black Cat Grumpy person in the relationship is the girl. I feel like that's like so rare nowadays in romance, where the grump is the woman, but that's what I prefer personally. I gave this book 3 stars. I think that I think one of her first books, if not her first one, I actually don't know. I know that this is one of her first books though. For this to be one of her first, I thought that this was really cute, really simple, easy, quick read. If I'm being honest, it's only like a little over 300 pages, very digestible. Like I said before, I'm not the biggest fan of insta love, and that's what it was giving off the bat. If not insta love, then like insta lust. They were really into each other within like the first 50 pages, in my opinion, to the point where like when the actual love confession happened, I was like kind of like uninterested, because I was like, well, okay, the build up to this was just like whatever. But I do like a man that's down bad for a woman. I do. So for that, I gotta give her 10s. I don't know what the equivalent of a 3-star would be for a 10 out of 10 rating. But I went into this book already knowing a few of the trigger warnings, but I will tell you guys, if you don't know the trigger warnings, you should definitely check them, because there are a few in here. Because although this is like a small town kind of cozy romance, there are like a few topics brought up that I was like I said, I knew the trigger warnings, but I wasn't expecting them to get brought up the way that they did. So I would check trigger warnings before reading this. I think I will continue reading the series. I think that Talia Hibbert is just really funny in the way that she delivers banter and like the comedy aspects of a rom-com book. She has everything that I want when it comes to that, and I honestly forgot. Like, it's been so long since I've read her her books, and this just brought me back to like 2020, 2021 when I first started reading romance, and like her books were like at the top of my list of recommendations, still are, honestly, because one thing I like about her books, they will always have not only a black female lead, but usually plus size black female lead, despite what this cover is giving. I don't know if I'm gonna put the indie cover or the trad published cover, but the indie cover has like not a plus size woman on it, but the descriptions you could tell that she is plus size. Usually a black plus size woman who is usually on the spectrum of some sort. Ruth is autistic, and I know that like in the Brown Sisters trilogy, all of the Brown sisters are on the spectrum, and I think one of them has like chronic illness, like chronic pain. So she does a really good job talking about those things in her books, but not to the point where it's like preachy. It's just like really naturally brought into the story and like characterization, and I like that. I really do. I think I will continue the book. They're really nothing to like rave home about. Like if you're into small town romances, I would recommend them, but they're not like anything spectacular. You know what I mean? That's gonna be it for today's video. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. If you did, thank you so much. Let me know what you read in the month of May. If you have any recommendations for me in the upcoming months, let me know, because I'm not kidding, guys. This slump is something serious. Like I'm very scared. We might have to do a video of me like trying to break out of it, because I can feel it coming and I'm scared, genuinely terrified. So yeah, if you have any recommendations, leave them in the comments below and I will try to get to them. If you'd like to follow me on my social media, it'll all be linked down in the descriptions below. And yeah, I think that's it. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye everyone.